Welcome to Selling in the Motor Trade, in association with Automotive Management and symcotraining. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips, and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. And firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in. Welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Today, I'm joined by Mike Jones. Mike Jones is, for the people in the UK, will know that Mike Jones was working with ASE for a long, long time. I know that the world's changing now. I'm sure he's going to tell us a little bit about what he's doing now and the future. So firstly, I just want to say welcome aboard and thank you very much for joining the podcast.
Morning. Thanks so much for having me on.
Now, the first thing is we'd like to get to know our guests before we start. So we have a quickfire round of questions. So a couple of easy ones to start with. So Mike, what would you prefer? A nice cold beer or a glass of wine or neither?
Both, depending on the occasion. If I've just stepped off the ski slopes or whatever, then a cold beer is nice, but with dinner, then it's always wine.
Fair enough then. Are you more of a beach holiday, city break, or from what I've just heard, maybe the slopes?
Yeah, the slopes or the beach usually, albeit with all these sort of things, I tend to like change. So it depends on what I've had recently as to what I'm fancying next.
Cool. Okay. So are you more a Italian meal, a curry, a Chinese?
All of the above, depending on. I was going to say we're fortunate that I get to go to lots of different restaurants. We've got such varied cuisine that I like all foods. Frequently, spicier the better.
I'm hearing lots of change and varieties coming on strong here. A good book or maybe a movie?
I love books. Having kids, it's a challenge to find time to read them. Nowadays, as they get older, there's a little bit of time on holidays on the sun lounges, and obviously driving around listening to the audiobooks works very well. So no, I love a book, but then relaxing in front of a movie works too.
Yeah, I suppose we spend our life in cars driving up and down motorways. So audiobooks is just a revelation for me. Are you more of a morning person, seize the day, or a night owl?
I'm definitely more of a morning person. My responsibilities, always have been. I always get up early, get out and do, sort of do the morning routine in the house. But also, from a work point of view, I'm at my most productive in the morning.
Cool. Okay. So listen, can you tell the listeners, how did you get started in the motor trade? What was your background, Mike?
Well, to a certain extent, I've been in the motor trade since probably I was around 2. At that point in time, my dad was an accountant for a Ford dealer, not a million miles from where we both live, and he decided to go out on his own, and so he then started doing monthly management accounts using obviously way pre-computers, using books, and build up a business that did that then morphed into doing people's audits, that then turned into ASE and ultimately grew to have sort of 13 offices around the world collecting data, financial data, P&L data, etc., from sort of 15,000 dealers a month. So I was sort of born into it in that respect. I went off and did my own thing. I decided I love business, and I found it fascinating as to how people make money. And so I went off and qualified as an accountant. As we've already touched on, I love skiing. So I went to Vancouver and worked for one of the big accounting firms for a couple of years, so I could do a bit of skiing and golfing whilst I was also working. And then I found, sort of sat back and, well, what do you really want to do? And I found the motor trade fascinating. And so I've been in it for the last 20 odd years ever since.
Yeah, too. The motor trade is amazing, isn't it? It's the characters in the motor trade, and also the business is one of the most complicated businesses out there. You can compare that to other businesses there. There's just so much happening in it, isn't it? All the time, especially over the last 2 years. I mean, the changes in the motor trade after 2 years is amazing. So can I ask you, this is a shameless plug for our first 90-day sales training program, because we run a sales training company, as all our listeners will know. But we often say in the first 90 days, we often learn things, good and bad, that last with us for the rest of our career. Can I ask you, in the first 3 months, is there anything that you learned that's as relevant today as it is when you started?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you get qualifying as an accountant is you get to go around and nosy into lots and lots of different people's businesses, and this is not just in the first 90 days. This then has continued all through my life, and everybody in business does. You can learn something from. Now, you might be learning what to do as you manage your team or deal with customers, or you might be learning what not to do. And the biggest challenge we have, I've had particularly with sort of salespeople in the industry, is having great success bringing people from outside the industry until the people within the business show them how it should be done, and show them how to properly pre-qualify customers and walk away from deals and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's always been one of my learnings, and sort of keeping that, buying a car should be a joyful experience, and frequently around the world we turn it into something that isn't. Businesses that can capture that joy and keep it all the way through to delivery, which particularly on some of the issues we're talking about now can be into years, keeping that excitement going is going to be a huge challenge for everybody. But we've got to put ourselves back into the customer's shoes. And when I go into business, essentially, I'm one of the only people who buys cars and gets them serviced. And that gives massive valuable insights as to what the customer really feels and what they want.
It's so true. The first 3 months, you see a brand new salesperson, their sales keep on going stronger and stronger. But after that, they have that 3 months dip sometimes. And we say they've got a bit of knowledge now. You know how to prejudge a customer now. When they first start, they speak to absolutely everyone. You see it so often, don't you?
And it's been one of the changes as I've gone through my career, is that when people turn up to buy, they turn up massively well informed, and they do turn up to buy. They're not turning up to wander around and have a look because they couldn't find any information elsewhere. Yeah. That level of sort of perfect information that we've now got into the customer's hands does mean they're ready to buy. So we need to be engaging with them on the at the dealership, on the lot, in the way that they want to be dealt with, but helping them in that journey, not deciding that they're just here for a Saturday afternoon out and to look at some cars.
Okay. Now, Mike, we touched on this before, but this podcast, UK, Ireland, we have a big listenership or readership or whatever the phrase is. And we're getting a lot of people in Australia because that's where I grew up, and it's a huge market. And more and more in Canada, for some strange reason, don't know why Canada and America, but for the people who don't know ASE, anyone in the UK knows ASE inside out, back to front. Can you just talk a little bit about what ASE actually did? Just give us a bit of idea of where your knowledge base come from, just for the people who don't know about ASE.
Sure. I mean, it's very much from a financial background. So as part of the franchise agreements, as people know, the dealers across nearly all parts of the world have to submit their financial data, their monthly P&L performance data, to a third-party company that aggregates it and produces interfirm comparisons or composites.
Mm-hmm.
ASE grew up doing that in the UK, then spread into Europe, as some of the clients and some of the contracts went pan-European rather than just being in the UK, and then we went global, collecting data from across the globe, particularly for the super luxury, but also for some of the big premium brands on a global basis, collecting that data. And so it gave us very live information as to how dealers were performing. Normally when people are looking at performance outside of registrations, but sort of registrations and sales are vanity, I'm always more interested in profit and how much money and cash we're generating. We had that financial data, and we had it within a month of the month closing. So my role was basically to interpret it, to go around the world, working out what people were doing well, where they could make more money, and also commentate on the industry and the overall performance, purely from a financial perspective. But having that live data is absolutely invaluable when you're challenging people, and you're querying why the performance is what it is. And for me, the way that we structured it and the way that we structured the analysis of it, it paints a picture of the dealership. Mm-hmm. So I could by reading the key ratios, I can already have a picture in my mind of what the dealership is and how proactive they are, what it looks like, where the potential problems are before we even walk in, because of sort of taking the numbers off a page and turning it into real life examples.
Yeah, what I love about that is, I suppose, in our business and your business, we do a lot of R&D. Now, a lot of people say R&D is research and development. But Mike, I call it rob and duplicate. If there's a great idea out there, I look at it and rob it and duplicate it and just share best practice. So you must have seen some really, really good dealers over the time of you going into businesses. Can I ask you, what separates the good from the greats? What do the greats actually do in your experience? Is there anything specific stands out?
Absolutely. And in our world, it was rob and distribute rather than duplicate. But we didn't stick our own logos on. But it was, I mean, I've seen so many great innovations over time. That have helped people sell more cars, sell more add-ons, sell more labor, sell more parts. They've seen the advent of video, we've seen all that sort of stuff. But for me, the difference between the great and the good is in the execution with every customer every time and getting that consistency. And as we've seen some of the bigger groups grow, that's really where they've struggled. They sort of run out of decent people to deliver with every customer every time. I always hark back on my own experience as well. I've got I've got my car going in for a warranty check tomorrow, and I know the experience is going to be horrible. Now, I know that this dealer group has some great dealerships and some great people. They just don't happen to be in the dealership that's closest to me. So they're struggling on that. And sometimes we don't, it's getting better, but people don't have the analysis within a dealer group to know where they need to be and know what needs to be fixed. But at the end of the day, we're a people business, and so the greatest businesses treat their people well and get them engaged with the customers, building that customer delight, and the profits come from that.
Okay, I understand you sold ASE recently. What are the plans for the future?
Yeah, we sold it just over 12 months ago, and ever since and into the future, I've been doing a whole variety of different projects for people. The majority is still in the motor trade because I love it. Back to what we talked about earlier on, the people are fascinating. The business is really complex. I mean, we have sort of 4 or 5 different businesses within each dealership, and that's assuming it's only a single brand. Which has helped us during the recessions and during COVID times move away from just sort of selling new cars. There's lots of inbuilt strength in the model. So I've been sort of going around doing a bit of buying and selling of dealerships for people. Or dealer groups for people that want me to help on that, but then doing lots of consulting, helping people improve their performance and also prepare for some of the things that are going to happen in the future. I mean, we've got agency coming down the line, we've got electrification coming down the line, both going to have massive impacts on businesses. So I've been helping retailers guide their way through that, but also helping in some of the negotiations between the sort of dealer councils, the retail networks, and their brands on the terms of agency, because it's going to be absolutely pivotal as we go forward. So I work best doing lots of different projects and being able to jump into different things rather than it being mundane. And one of the joys post sale is that I've absolutely been able to do that, working with people that I enjoy working with on projects I find fascinating.
Well, there's lots of subjects that I'd love to get into, and let's do a bit of a deep dive into agency, electrification, but also let's be talking about the Cavannas of the world, the Kazoos, the Cinch. We know that more and more customers are starting their buying process digitally. I don't know what it is. It's 20 odd hours of research people do before they walk in, if not even more now. Okay. With that in mind, I just want to ask you, the worlds of Kazoo. We're just got a situation at the moment where I think they floated for 7 billion. Last time I seen, they're worth less than $1 billion now. In the UK, we've got Kazoo. There's rumors that they're on their last legs. I just want to ask you, what's the future for the independent retailer? Or are these the Kazoos of the world going to take over? What are your views on that?
I think there's massively space for the independent retailer in the same way as I think there's space for the sort of owner-operator franchise dealership. I mean, as we're sort of alluding to what we talked about earlier on, it's probably something that you focus on as part of the business. The owner-operator, the single site, the independent can deliver great customer service. You can shake the hand of the person who owns the business, and you can get that delight, that personal touch within a smaller business that you just struggle to replicate in a bigger business. With regards to we've seen massive change in the UK and across the world, really, in used cars and used car retailing. We've seen the growth of the supermarkets. Now, clearly, we've got some of those being owned by franchise retailers, some of them being owned by independents, some people recently moving to to online, and in looking at each of the individual businesses, they all have their own strengths and they all have their own challenges. I mean, we saw, as we're recording it, Virtue have put out their numbers this morning, and compared to the numbers that were released by Kazoo for Q1, they're making 10 times as much gross profit on a used car sale compared to Kazoo, who've clearly struggled with regards to stock and also some of the process in bringing the reconditioning in-house. So, I mean, the motor trade is really quite complex. On one level, it's really simple as to what we're trying to do, and then but to actually achieve that, it's quite complex. And some of the people coming into the industry have I think, thought it was easier than it actually is. Kazoo are clearly, they're looking to build a market brand, and then assuming that profitability will come along afterwards. Cinch have got, as part of the vertically integrated Constellation Group, particularly if you add Marshalls in as well, that's a completely different business with BCA behind it as well. And then Kazam, I thought that was going to very much succeed, but it appears there's been a bit of a falling out at the top, and we're now sort of dealing with the ramifications of that.
Well, it's the whole Kazoo. It's getting the stock. We just know in the last 2 years, that's been every dealer. Where do you get used car stock around the world? And Kazoo, I just could never get my head around where their stock was going to come from. Yeah, sure, they're buying from BCA to start with, but of course, they're competing with Cinch. There's always going to be an issue there. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and see what happens on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the art to used car sales, particularly, if we're talking about now where there's virtually perfect information in the used car market, the customer knows really what they're buying, how much they should be paying, and has done, as you said, massive amounts of research. The art is in the buying. And so you need to be better and smarter at buying, because if you've got the right car that you've bought at the right price, it will sell.
Yeah, so true. My very first sales manager said, you know what, you have anyone selling a car if you buy it right. It always has been. And that's what, 31 years ago, something like that. And I think the whole Kazoo, that's the bit that I just couldn't get my head around it unless they, do they buy a dealer group? They almost have to try and get access to trade-ins. And also, I don't know, the Kazoo specifically, Peter Smythe, the Swansway Group, he quite rightly said on one of these interviews, he said, you know what, it's not just like buying a tin of beans. When you buy a whole lot of more tin of beans and get a cheaper price. Every used car is an individual used car. And when he comes on and says they're disruptors, I always think, well, what are they doing different that we can't do in a dealer group? There's very, very little. I think it was Robert Forrester was turned around and said to the sales director of Nissan, what do actually Kazoo do that Virtue don't do? The only thing he could come up with is vans running up and down the motorway. So are they really the disruptors anymore? I'm not sure if they are.
Well, I think some of the things that they were looking to fix weren't broken, and certainly weren't broken in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know from sort of operating overseas, the used car market in the UK is phenomenally sophisticated. In fact, in my opinion, it's the most sophisticated used car market there is in the world, and sort of the principles then get sort of translated out
so true.
The world.
Yeah.
If you look at Kazoo, and those guys did an absolutely stunning job. Let's get this right. Their timing was brilliant. The amount of funds that they raised and the story that they built was sensational. Yeah. And I think we can all learn from that. I think we can all learn. If we go back pre-COVID, there were still many, many businesses who wouldn't give the customer any information unless they physically turned up. Don't tell them anything over the phone, don't tell them anything over internet, get an appointment, get them in. Well, customers just don't want that. Some customers just don't want that. And so we need to be able to be open. And I think when it was launched, I was expecting to be blown away with the online customer experience. I thought they were going to show me something sensational as a customer that was completely different to anything else out there in the industry. And I expected to be wowed, and I expected them to drag the industry along with regards to the way that we presented vehicles and the way that we dealt with customers online or remotely. it was just the same as everybody else in the main, using technology that other people were using. So I was disappointed in that with regards to how they launched. I think I think COVID has potentially done more to make retailers omni-channel than Kazoo has, but we did need to get more omni-channel. We needed to get more digital. The fact that we couldn't reserve online, we couldn't order online, we couldn't pay through the vast majority of websites pre-COVID was a problem, because some customers do want to do it that way, and we need to be able to deal with them. But sort of the 1 year, 18 months of COVID forced people to get into click and collect, forced people to get into the online journey in a much more sophisticated way. And so if you look at the offering now, I think the dealers, the franchise retailers in particular, still en masse don't necessarily create the same wow of the vehicle turning up and the vehicle being displayed. People are now choosing to do more in dealerships rather than click and collect or home delivery, but the dealers are now starting to charge for that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and whether it gives the Kazoos of this world a competitive advantage back.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I'm sure you've done it. I know we've tried to buy cars through Cinch and all these things. And you're right, it didn't blow me away. I looked at so many things thinking, well, we do that anyway and have done that for a long time. I can remember being 17 years old in Townsville, North Queensland, Tony Island Holden, and get an inquiry from someone in Mount Isa. And my sales manager saying, right, well, walk around the car, get the phone and describe it to him. Now, we didn't have video back then or anything like that. But again, this remote selling we've been doing for a long time. And I agree with you. I was hoping for a lot more. Also, I want to go.
One of the things that they do well is I like the honesty.
Yeah.
That's into, the vast number of pictures. And if there's something wrong with the car, I like explaining why. But it's a used car, so it's not going to be perfect. But if there is an imperfection, that you're not going to try and. I don't like the we'll fix that before you pick it up rubbish.
Yeah.
But if there is something that is the case with the vehicle, then I think it's right to describe it. But my biggest challenge with regards to used cars is getting people to describe. Either on a video or on the internet search engines, etc., or the websites, what makes that car unique? They're all unique, but why should I buy that one?
Yeah.
We've met over in the States, but you listen to sort of Dale Pollock describe selling cars. It was owned by it was a non-smoker. There was no pets, whatever it is that made this car unique.
Yeah,
translating that into the new customer, I think is a real key differentiator.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn.